Hello. Is it possible to move on too fast after a divorce? This is often related to questions of time, physical time, as to how long it will take to move on after a divorce. But really, time is both irrelevant but also important, and let me explain why. It's irrelevant because it's going to depend on where you are or where someone is at the point when the divorce happens, that physical divorce happens. Some people seem to move on fast, and that can be for a whole number of reasons. One of which could be that emotionally and psychologically, they have already moved on before the physical divorce or separation happened. And they are ready for the next step by the time the whole process has been worked through. It also can be that it's important, time is important, because it's important to take time for yourself to heal. So for somebody who is still at that point of divorce, still maybe in shock, or has all those negative feelings that can happen about shame and guilt and grief and anger, and if all those feelings are still happening, then it is really important to take time to heal. And that means allowing changes in perspective and outlook and looking at things new, because if you stay in the drama and if you stay in the denial of what's happening, then you can find yourself asking those questions that really there isn't an answer to, like, why did this happen? Why am I feeling like this? Why? And it's a little bit like a toddler where there's one answer, it is followed by the question why and why and why. It can be a temptation to use a new relationship to fill in that gap, to squash the pain down, or to fill in that gap that is left by somebody who is no longer as close and intimate. The problem with that is if someone goes into a new relationship without resolving those issues, then they're likely to repeat the patterns. And even if they've partially worked through some of them, it's still possible to repeat the pattern, but to a lesser extent. I'll give you an example. I once worked with somebody who had been married to an physically abusive, alcoholic husband. Quite a dangerous situation that she managed to get away from. And she went quite quickly into a relationship with somebody who was teetotal and who she felt she could talk to, which was great, except this person, whilst they were teetotal, they turned out to be both emotionally manipulative and psychologically abusive. So can you see what she'd done is she'd moved from a very violent situation with an abusive a partner who was an alcoholic, and the feeling was, well, this person's a teetotal, so that's going to be helpful, and they're certainly not violent physically, but it turned out they were emotionally and psychologically abusive. That's why it's important to take time to really understand where those patterns come from. Why did we choose the person we chose in the first place? Because it's all about us. It's all about how we feel about ourselves and what we're looking for in somebody else. And if we haven't done the inner work to heal those patterns, then without realizing it from that subconscious place, we're going to attract, if not something identical, certainly something very similar. It's critically important to take time to heal and to discover what you really want when a relationship has broken up or when there's a divorce. That might be things that you wanted to do as a child but never got around to. Might have been things that you wanted to do in the relationship but it wasn't possible for whatever reason, or it might be completely new things. But to allow yourself that time to discover what is it you really like to do without having to take anybody else into consideration, or to compromise or to justify yourself, can be quite freeing and help you to see what it is you really want to do, what it is you really want your life to look like. And that means when you do that, you're not going to be moving into a new relationship from a place of any neediness or wanting somebody to be there to fill a gap. You're going to move into a relationship where you actually know that you are absolutely fine on your own, that you can survive and even thrive. And that gives you a place of inner strength and ability to maintain yourself as well as being in a couple. So those are all a number of reasons as to why it is possible to move on too fast after a divorce.